Hello, everyone. We're going to get started now. I know some folks are still joining, so I'll try to take a little bit more time. But I'm Christine Shao. I'm the Managing Director of the Stevens Initiative. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. The Stevens Initiative, we are thrilled to be partnering with the Forum on Education Abroad on this webinar and discussing strategies for successful virtual exchange recruitment. At the Stevens Initiative, we work to strengthen the virtual exchange field. We invest in grant programs by doing that, and we create resources, and we advocate for the field as a whole. This discussion is really exciting and a really important one to have, especially with an ever-changing education and exchange landscape. I imagine most of you here today either play a role in thinking about how you will start to use virtual exchange at your institution or maybe improve upon what you're doing already. So it's going to be a very insightful conversation. For those of you who are new, virtual exchange is a tool that can be used to provide a meaningful intercultural exchange experience to young people. It helps to better prepare them for the future, broadening their perspectives on lives, and just making them ready to enter the workforce, for example. It also can help educators achieve their larger learning goals. When you think about a virtual exchange program, it involves a lot of different people. There's the young people, so the participants, there's the educators, there are the staff, the administrators and facilitators, the tech people. So that we have to be thinking about how to capture the attention of all these different audience groups and how to convey the value proposition to them in a way that speak to them, and then somehow converts that interest into action. And so that's a lot to have to consider. And so I'm really excited to listen today and learn from our panelists. And again, thank you for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amelia Dietrich, who will be moderating today's panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine, and thanks to the Stevens Initiative for inviting the Forum on Education Abroad to be a part of today's event. As Christine said, my name is Amelia Dietrich. I am the Director for Research and Resources at the Forum on Education Abroad, which is, of course, the standards development organization for the field of study abroad here in the United States, recognized by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice. So we're engaged in a lot of training and resource development related to how to deliver quality educational transformational study abroad experiences to as many students as possible. And over the course of the last several months, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, we have been engaging more in talking about virtual exchange and other kinds of virtual programming for students while physical mobility across borders is not particularly feasible for many people. So I've been really enjoying getting to know and learn from our panelists today as we prepared for our webinar. And so I'm excited also to share their knowledge and wisdom and experience with all of you. Our plan for today is we prepared a few questions in advance that we're gonna sort of guide them through a conversation. They'll share some of their experiences, but we do also hope to leave ample time for Q&A from our audience towards the end of our session. So as they're talking, if you think of things you want to ask, you can feel free to submit those questions using the Q&A on your menu bar at any time. And we will get to as many of those as we can before we wrap up at the hour mark for our webinar today. But for now, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to ask Megan to get you started. Let us know where you work and a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Amelia. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Megan Neuhaus. I'm a senior project manager at the William Davidson Institute at the University of Michigan. And we're an independent nonprofit research and educational organization. We work in low and middle income countries to address development issues through the power of business solutions. And our Global Virtual Learning Center is implementing the Business and Culture, a virtual practicum program, which is supported by the Stevens Initiative. And I know we'll have time to get a little more into the program details a little bit later.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Thanks for being here. Lindsay, how about you? Please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you so much. It's great to be here with everyone. My name is Lindsay Powers. I'm a senior program officer with IREX in the education practice, and I specifically work on virtual exchange programs such as the Global Solutions Sustainability Challenge program, as well as other programs within our education practice related to teacher development in Iraq. And as I mentioned, this is with IREX and work in various different countries on leadership and education and providing equal access and developing youth. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Lindsay. Kat, go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Katherine Hansen, and I am the Digital Program Officer with The Experiment Digital at World Learning. I primarily manage our Experiment Digital program called Youth Leadership and Community Service, which engages high school students between the ages of 14 and 19 between the US and the MENA region. This is an 8-week summer-long program which has 4 modules on digital citizenship, leadership and identity, community initiatives, and project planning. So really preparing our young people to implement projects after their virtual exchange program in their local communities. So I look forward to speaking a little bit more about how we find those really incredible young leaders for our program.
Sure. And Kat, you got into some more details, I think, about your program and the others. So we're going to turn around and go back in the opposite direction and let Lindsay dig in a little deeper on an overview of your program or programs that you manage and who you're recruiting for those programs.
Sure, yeah. So with the Global Solutions Sustainability Challenge program, it is a virtual exchange. It's essentially a virtual business competition, and it's implemented by IREX, and it supports workforce development in both the US and Iraq and Jordan. And essentially, binational teams come together of students and they work through a curriculum that is focused on the design thinking process, and it's over the course of 10 weeks. And together as binational teams, they are essentially designing a sustainable solution to a real need within their local communities. And they're coming up with a business concept, and they are submitting that at the very end to be able to be awarded a grant to further develop their prototypes, with basically developing their prototypes with the competition. And so it is a virtual business competition, and it's a project-based virtual exchange. So very different from just a simple dialogue. It's a project-based virtual exchange. And we specifically focus on US community college students and then university students in Iraq and Jordan. And the program is basically, it models an authentic workplace. Because it's project-based, it really affords itself to developing global citizenship and problem-solving skills and cross-cultural communication. And when we're thinking about direct recruiting for this program, we're specifically focused on the faculty. So we're looking to recruit faculty at US community colleges or these universities in Iraq and Jordan, and faculty apply on behalf of their students. And once they're partnered with us in the program, they then recruit a team of students, and whether that's 8 students or 16 students. And so the faculty are being recruited, and then they're going out and developing these teams of students. And with the faculty and how they're implementing it within their institution, it really varies depending on the need of the faculty member. So a lot of our US faculty are implementing it within an existing course. So it fits within a course that they're already teaching, whether that's business management or entrepreneurship or global humanities, and it fits really well within that. And so they're implementing it within a course. Other faculty have taken it and they do it across various departments. And so they're recruiting students from various different departments at their institution, and it's a part of like an entrepreneurship club or an honors club, and they're implementing it in that way. For our MENA faculty, they are implementing it directly as an extracurricular activity at their institution. So that's a little bit about our program, virtual-based, it's project-based virtual exchange, and we specifically directly recruit faculty.
Cool, yeah, thanks, Lindsay. And Megan, how about your global business program? Who are you recruiting?
Yeah, so we're recruiting undergraduate students. It is a 4-credit course that connects students from Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, and the US. It's action-based learning course on international business cultures. And so the students are put on cross-cultural teams, and they work on an international consulting project and other assignments together. And they learn to problem solve and collaborate through this in a global team environment. And so we have students participating from the University of Michigan, American University in Cairo, American University of Beirut, and then we also have students from the Benghazi, Libya area as well. It's cross-disciplinary. but the majority are business students. And so, I think we'll get maybe a little more into just our individual recruitment strategy, but I'll just say that our MENA partners are the ones responsible, Middle East and North Africa partners are the ones responsible for recruiting undergraduate students at their institutions. And then my institute and my team, I manage the business and culture program. We recruit students at the University of Michigan. And so that's really our focus area.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks for describing what MENA stands for anyone who's logging in and not familiar. Middle East North Africa region, maybe a term some of you are familiar with, maybe not, which of course is the region that's the focus of the bulk of the Stevens Initiative's work, which is why we have that theme uniting us all today. Kat, I'm gonna have you go next and tell us a bit about what are some of the key points of your recruitment strategy for your program, and what have you learned or best practices you've developed through that process?
Yeah, of course. So something that makes our program unique is that we are an open enrollment program. So we don't do, as World Learning, we don't do direct recruitment ourselves. Instead, we work with our various partners on the ground to recruit high school students to join. So our program is open to anyone across the US, and now we're open across the MENA region, but we have partners in Algeria, Iraq, and Yemen. And so they're working with youth organizations and contacting schools and presenting to students there to get them interested in our program. And so on the US side, we work with the Global Ties Network, which also is made up of a lot of different youth organizations, and they help us recruit our American participants. And so that kind of balance helps us reach, every summer we aim to reach up to 1,000 youth with this program. So it's a pretty large program and a big recruitment push to get the word out. And so some of the strategies that we found really work is sharing the stories of our participants themselves. Young people want to see other young people doing these really cool things and having these experiences. And if they're able to see this young person did this program and created this project and see the successes that they've had because of it, they then become very motivated to do it themselves and see that it's possible for a high school student to step up into this program and create their own project, which is really empowering and important to emphasize when we're speaking about the program, really talking about our alumni success and highlighting what they're doing now has been really, really successful for us.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes a lot of sense. Megan, how about you? In your program, who are you recruiting? What are some of your key points of your recruitment strategy? And knowing that you're recruiting a bit more within a campus context, I'd be curious to hear how that differs from what Kat and her team are doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we found that we really need to cast a wide net because there's just so much going on campus. And so we utilize social media, absolutely, Twitter especially. So something that we found is that Facebook is not popular with US students. And so we found that isn't very successful. So that's a learning for us. We utilize digital and physical signage on campus. So there's like a kind of in the middle of the University of Michigan campus, there's an area called the Diag, and there's basically, we've put like just big kind of banner style posters up, and there's just so much foot traffic in that area. So we found that can be helpful to kind of capture students' attention. We use email listservs very extensively, and some word of mouth as well. And we've really developed a wide network of contacts across campus that really help us spread the word. And we've also worked with campus partners to get the course added to, for example, sub-plans for students from different degree programs. So they can, hear about it that way. And also it kind of, benefits them academically through their program. And we also have gotten it shared through relevant institutes on campus. through, things like newsletters. So for example, we work with the Center for Middle East and North African Studies and the International Institute, along with a lot of other centers just across campus to make sure the word is getting out there. And then they also share it with their advisors, who share it with their students as well. So that has been really helpful. And since COVID, I think we focused a little more on study abroad centers across campus as well, given that, traveling and kind of more traditional study abroad is not really an option right now. And so, so that's another element of our recruitment strategy as well. And we have done some focus groups with students to try to figure out, what's the most effective way to reach them. And surprisingly for us, it wasn't social media. It was actually email. So that was, a learning as well that I wanted to share, because I think our team had, initially made just assumptions about the best way to, like reach young people or something, but it actually wasn't social media. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good point, and good to know that you got some focus group data there to enlighten that. Thank you so much. Lindsay, I know you said you're, in contrast with Megan and Kat, you're recruiting faculty and they do the student recruitment. So why don't you tell us a bit about your recruitment strategy and what works best for you all?
Sure, yeah, and it's a similar approach to what Megan and Kat were sharing. We do massive listservs and emails, and we've actually found that that's like most effective in being able to reach a large wide range of faculty across the US. And we are looking to, we started with institutions in 3 different states. And right now we are hitting 15 different states. And so we're looking to increase across, the entire United States. But mass email listservs have really worked well for us, as well as our network. So really, and what Kat was saying about engaging the alumni and then being able to share their stories of the impact, a huge part for us is what we call champion facilitators, those faculty members who have been with us for 1, 2, 3, 4 cohorts and really get the ethos of our program and are able to share that with other faculty on their campus and bring in other faculty for additional cohorts or spread it to other faculty at different institutions. So a huge part of that is network. And especially for us in Iraq and Jordan, the networking, the connection, the partnership, the relationship is a huge aspect of being able to draw people into the program. And we also do outreach through conferences. That's a huge part for us for faculty because they're attending conferences such as NACE or connected to other organizations such as AACC or CCID. And so through those networks, we've been able to also highlight and share the program and bring others in. We've also had some of our champion facilitators facilitate or present at different conferences as well, highlighting the program. And so that is able to spread the word and recruit additional faculty. So again, like you said, we do focus on the faculty members, not the students, and the faculty do a fantastic job at being able to recruit the students at their institutions. So.
Yeah, I'm seeing Megan and Catherine nodding along because I think they recognize that even if they are doing more direct to student recruitment, that having faculty or other champions in the midst to help as a part of their strategy, I suspect works and helps with them as well. I'm going to stay with you, Lindsay, because you brought up some themes that relate to the next question that I wanted to ask each of you, which is that one important element when recruiting is being able to communicate about the value of virtual exchange broadly and about your program in particular and what the value of that is. So I was wondering if you could dig a little deeper and explain to us what your value proposition is for virtual exchange as you see it.
Sure, and I love talking about this. I think this is something that when you think about virtual exchange today, a lot of people, I don't know if they have an accurate understanding of what virtual exchange is and what it's not. And there's a lot of myths around it. And I think it's really great to be able to talk about what is the value proposition? What does virtual exchange actually afford? And there's various things depending on the type of program virtual exchange it is. To me, I really feel like virtual exchange is a critical developing sector at institutions. And it's not just, a replacement for study abroad or just something to, fluff up or add to a learning experience, but it really is something that I think institutions need to think critically about how they're integrating virtual exchange at their institutions in a regular way, that it becomes a best practice among faculty. And so talking about what does it afford is critical and essential. And for project-based virtual exchange, such as Global Solutions, where students are actually collaborating, they're working together on these binational teams. The biggest value proposition is that it is an authentic environment to develop workforce skills. And students are walking away from these virtual exchange experiences with resume builders. It's a huge resume builder for the students. They are developing in a very authentic way empathy and adaptability and the ability to communicate, work in a team, developing leadership. And these are all skills that when you're thinking about what employers are looking for today in youth, these are skills that are essential. And virtual exchange enables faculty to create a space where students can really develop these skills in an authentic way, where they feel like they're making a difference in their communities and they're connecting with people in a different country, in a different culture. And so I think, when you're talking about this value proposition, it's not just let's have a dialogue. There's real skills that are being developed for youth. And we have in our program, we provide youth essential skills badges. These are specific badges they can link or add on directly to their LinkedIn resumes. And we have students that walk away from the program saying, I talked about this virtual exchange experience in my interviews and was able to get a job because I was able to share about these skills I developed. And so they're real, virtual exchange can afford these incredible life-changing experiences for students at our institutions. And so I think that's a huge part of talking about the value proposition of virtual exchange.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how many of us have been now for almost a year, if not longer, working on remote first teams and still doing plenty of engagement, getting lots of work done. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And hopefully one people are starting to catch on to a little more these days, maybe than they used to. Kat, how about you? What would you add to that about the value proposition of virtual exchange as you see it?
Yeah, very similar to Lindsay, but at the high school level, I think we're preparing them more for going into university and kind of thinking about their future careers and how they can apply a global or international perspective to whatever field they go into. And because our program is driven by our participants' passions, that's a very wide range. We have some who want to go into medical fields, some who want to be engineers, but the purpose of this program is really to start thinking, even if you're not going in international relations, your field has an international component to it. And so starting to get them, we really have ability to start getting high schoolers who have this passion but don't know what to do with it, giving them a place where they have this toolkit and are enabled to actually make their idea happen. And so then going into college, on your college essays, you have to write about what you did in high school to be able to say, I started this project and implemented this project and recruited all these kids from my school to join me. It's a really incredible experience for them to be able to speak about. So I think that's the first level, most immediate, but then also on their resumes, as they start building that out, we also award digital badges. I think that's an incredible way to showcase skill sets. And so we encourage them to start linking that into their CVs or share on their social media, just to encourage other young people to start exploring opportunities to gain these skills. Some of their friends probably have never heard of critical thinking. Like, what does that even mean? And so they can click on their friend's badge that they just earned and see what did they do to earn that badge and do the same. So that's kind of the ripple effect that our program has, is we highlight that success of that one young person and then other people will follow in their steps. One thing about kind of communicating the value of virtual exchange, something that our marketing team has been working really hard on over this last year, where kind of the study abroad world and the virtual exchange world have kind of collided this last year. And there's been a need to distinguish the two, but you don't want to distinguish it in a way that values one more than the other. And so one really important shift we're trying to make on our team is in the language we use to describe these programs. Instead of referring to study abroad programs as in person, referring to them just as study abroad or a physical exchange. Because when you call a study abroad in person, you're implying that virtual exchange doesn't have a person component to it. Like, we're still in person here. We're all people. I'm talking face to face with you. And so just reframing how we look at the experience. And as Lindsay pointed out, kind of just evening that playing field where you see a virtual exchange as just as valid of as way or a tool to gain these skills as if you were doing a study abroad or a physical program. So I think that's really important. And then the last piece of it is just kind of highlighting all the benefits they get. And so something that's really nice with being part of Stevens Initiative is that our alumni get access to the Department of State Alumni Exchange Network as well as the Stevens Initiative Alumni Network. And so this also helps participants to be seen as equal as those who've done study abroad programs because they have access to the same networks, in addition to some benefits that they get just from virtual exchange, such as this ability to connect with participants from 10 different countries at once, versus if you're studying abroad, you're only really engaging in one culture. And so kind of that cross-cultural ability, there's a lot that we can do with virtual exchange. And so emphasizing where it is different and the benefits that virtual exchange can bring, but then also showing them that at the end of this program, they get the same results as they would if they had studied abroad.
Yeah, for sure. I always remind people that before the internet, the definition of virtual was about being simulated or not quite real, but sort of like it. And I think that's an important distinction, that when we're talking about virtual exchange, it's not simulated or sort of real interaction. It is real human interaction. Thanks, Kat. Megan, I'll turn to you. What's the value proposition of virtual exchange in general and your program in particular, and how do you communicate that to your potential students?
Yeah, so, I feel like my fellow panelists have done a really beautiful job of kind of articulating the value for them. And I'd say it's really similar, and it's very similar to Lindsay's program, especially, so because the students work on the internationalization consulting project together, we really focus on the benefits from a collaboration perspective and the skills that they're going to be building. So, the skills that Lindsay was mentioning, and just that developing those cross-cultural skills, those collaboration skills, just how important they are to career readiness for the workplace of today. So that's really been our focus. And I'll also mention that we've also had success using headshots of alumni, with quotations and testimonials. That's been really successful. We also have an alumni blog as well. And so, just being able to share the experience and the benefits of going through the virtual exchange program, and just really what they've learned, the connections that they've made, and how they're really, able to apply it to their lives once the exchange is done as well. And then our, students also receive a program certificate. So we provide that, digitally, so they can add that to their LinkedIn and mention on their CV as well. So I feel like that's also a really big incentive and benefit to the students that go through the program.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Megan, I'm going to stay with you for this next question, which is related to challenges that you face when recruiting. So, are there challenges? If so, what are they? And, what do you do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the biggest challenge is just kind of cutting through, all the noise that's on campus. And the students are busy. They have a lot going on. I know many of our students have a lot of different opportunities. They have competing priorities. And so getting them interested in a concept that they're not used to, like virtual exchange, it's something that takes some level usually of education just to try to get the concept across to people. So I think that is kind of been the biggest challenge, how to kind of just cut through that noise and showcase the value. And in terms of the kind of the pandemic's effect on that, on it, it's been interesting for us because we have really good numbers this semester in terms of, on the US student side in recruitment. But I'll say in the fall, when COVID was still pretty new and that people were still kind of, seeing what the impact would be just on their academic life, on their classes, when they're having to shift to doing so many of their courses virtually and online. We had a really tough time recruiting last semester. So it's just been interesting for us, just the effect of the pandemic on that. But yeah, it seems like, students are really kind of overcoming that learning curve and learning, or, really realizing, I think, the value of connecting and collaborating virtually, and that it's possible, and that it can actually be a positive experience. So yeah.
Thanks, Megan. How about you, Lindsay? Challenge you face when recruiting and how you deal with it?
Sure. Yeah. Similar to what Megan was sharing, just in regards to the pandemic, this has definitely obviously impacted so many aspects of life, and definitely virtual exchange being one of them. With our faculty, when the pandemic hit, there's a lot of interest in the program, but then as soon as everyone was moving to this remote learning and having to learn new platforms for their institution, and moving to the virtual learning, we realized that a lot of faculty were at like max capacity for new programming and trying to implement something new. And so that was a real challenge that we faced in recruiting. We had a lot of interest, but then, at the end, there just wasn't enough capacity to take on a new program. And so, that's something that we're working with. And we've also, the aspect of our program, it's project-based. There's a myth around virtual exchange, especially around project-based, that it doesn't take any time or money, that it's easy to implement. And that's just not true. While yes, it doesn't take a lot of money, the time and effort aspect is real. It does take time to implement virtual exchange, especially if you've never done it before. There's a learning curve. And so I think for some faculty, especially project-based, it's a lot to implement, and that can be overwhelming at first. And so one thing that we have is a lot of faculty end up co-facilitating with someone else, so they can learn about the experience without having to just dive in on their own. So that's been really helpful to allow faculty to adjust to that. And then with our program, we also are trying to find this right, niche with regards to, doing project-based, but that it's not too overwhelming, that it does fit really well within a curriculum or a course. And so that I would say just is one challenge. That's the reality of virtual exchange. Now that's, specifically, I think project-based, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into dialogues as well, but maybe not as much as project-based. The other thing I would just say is a challenge is just around the narrative of virtual exchange. I think a lot of faculty just don't really fully understand what can be afforded and how you can actually, implement a virtual exchange within your curriculum or your course. And I think there's still a lot of learning that can be developed around that, and a lot of awareness that can occur on institutions for faculty for how they can implement various types of virtual exchange that fits well with the course that they're teaching. So I think those are two challenges and ways that we as IREX were looking to develop toolkits that help and support faculty with implementing virtual exchange on a general basis, and something that we're looking to help support further on.
Thanks, Lindsay. And Kat, how about you? Any other challenges you face you'd like to share?
Yeah, so we kind of had the opposite problem. So we don't engage directly with educators. Like, educators aren't involved in our program. Our program is facilitated by alumni of various World Learning programs, and also some of our previous group leaders for study abroad programs. So we have like temporary staff as facilitators over the summer who are actually implementing the program. So we don't have as much of the challenge of educator dropout, but that's very real, especially during the school year with virtual exchange. And so we kind of had, since we're open enrollment and are kind of a program that young people can just do on their own time over the summer, we actually saw a huge influx in our application numbers this summer because so many other opportunities had shut down. And so that's in part also from our study abroad participants who had planned to go abroad this summer, they all ended up transitioning over, or had the option to transition over into virtual exchange. So we got a group of kind of our experiment study abroad, joined our cohort, and then just kind of we saw across the country, young people were craving opportunities to connect and kind of just have some stability in their schedule. So I think a challenge with that is very similar to Megan, though. We were doing this in the same period when everything was transitioning over. So young people were a little bit wary about digital tools and being online, and weren't quite sure what the summer was going to look like yet. At that point, we weren't even sure if things were going to turn around by the summer and they would start having their extracurricular activities again and wouldn't be able to do the program. So a lot of uncertainty leading into the summer. And we were a little bit worried about how this would affect our engagement on the program. And so the biggest thing that we were planning for was this screen fatigue, is the word that we use often. So screen fatigue is referring to just in the pandemic, everything is online. So how do you explain how this is distinguish this from online learning? This isn't the same. A lot of people kind of now just connect virtual exchange and online learning together. And I think that's kind of hurt virtual exchange's reputation, because people have some very strong feelings towards online learning right now. And so I think we really have emphasized that we have been doing this for years now. This wasn't something that we just transitioned to in the last year. We have an established structure. We know, we're confident and we know what we're doing. And so that you're able just to join the program and have this experience without kind of all the additional uncertainty. We really try to set as many expectations as we could and give as much information as we could to make people feel a little bit more secure in the program and stay engaged. So yeah, I think that's really important, just capitalizing off of the credibility of the program. I think the last worry was thinking about kind of those transitioned participants. And they had the expectation to study abroad. So this is playing out in real time, this dynamic of study abroad versus virtual exchange, which is the superior program. And so we were worried that they would be disappointed. They didn't get this study abroad experience. But actually what we found is they were really grateful. And they really appreciated, one, the opportunity to connect and exchange in a time when no other opportunities existed. They understood the reality that they can't travel, but also just the exposure that they got that they didn't expect. Many of these young people didn't previously have an interest in the Middle East or North Africa at all. A lot of them planned to study abroad in Germany or other locations in Europe or South America, which is great for their cultural exposure, but this gave them the opportunity to meet young people from countries and cultures that they would have never interacted with otherwise. And so that was just a really cool, came from a challenge, but a really beautiful thing that came from that is that increased exposure and experience.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's good to hear. Thanks, Kat. I'm going to come back to you in a second, Kat. So if you need a sip of water before you talk again, we're now going to move into our audience questions. We have a ton of them. I don't know that we'll get to them all, but we're going to get to as many as we can. And the first one that caught my eye, maybe because we talk a lot about health and safety in study abroad as well, was related to, particularly Kat, for your program, because it's working with high school students who are potentially minors, issues of health and safety in an online environment, in a virtual environment for students, young students. And the question is whether your recruitment and communication involves information about health and safety online to address concerns for parents, and if so, how do you handle that?
For sure. So we are working with minors, so parents are looped into everything with our program and our recruitment, and are a big part of our recruitment strategy as well. Parents usually encourage their young people to get into opportunities like this. So we do some targeted recruitment to parents for that reason, but kind of the supplemental resources we provide for them. We have a FAQ, so frequently asked questions, and we have a parent document with that, so kind of goes through all the information they need to know for their kid. We do have a conditions of participation. So it outlines kind of all our different policies, especially our social media policy, since e-safety is really important during a virtual exchange. So understanding that they're not sharing pictures or content of their fellow peers who are also minors without consent. And so the parents get to kind of read through all those conditions, our different policies. They sign that form as well. And then we, in addition to that, have a participant handbook, and we encourage participants to be sharing that with their parents so that they understand exactly what they're doing. Because this was actually a challenge of our recruitment, is some parents with this transition to online learning were like, I don't want my kid in front of a computer all summer. But also this summer, what else were they going to be doing exactly? So we really had to show parents how this wasn't just them sitting in front of a computer. This was something that was building their skill sets, and was a really great opportunity to also just build friendships during a time where their children didn't have that. But the last note to that also is just that our programs are facilitated as well. So our facilitators go through a lot of health and safety training and have policies. We have an on-call 24/7 during the program if any incidents come up. So parents are kind of made aware of all of that at the beginning.
Yeah, good to know for sure. Thank you, Kat. Our next question, I'm going to ask Megan to start on this one, and then if others of you have things to add after she's answered, you can. And the question is, what message or narrative do you highlight in your social media and email to catch students' attention to make them participate in your program?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, we have shifted a little bit our messaging because of COVID. And so, we kind of say things like on Twitter, like, even though you can't travel right now, you can still make connections, things like that. And then we do also focus on, build workplace skills that are in demand now, cross-cultural collaboration, critical thinking, working on remote teams, these sort of things. So those are two things that I point out.
Yeah, Lindsay or Kat, do you have anything you'd add to that? Other narratives you like to highlight in your recruitment?
Yeah, we use a similar to Megan. We use the same, highlighting the workforce skills, project-based learning, being able to develop leadership and leadership skills. Do you want to connect with someone in another country? Specifically asking those questions that will draw their attention, related to culture, related to experiencing another country, but then also that workforce aspect as well.
Yeah, so I think we've touched a lot on the skills and the leadership and all of that, but I think another really key component of all of World Learning programs, but especially our virtual programming, is emphasizing community. And so whenever I refer to our network, I don't just call us a network, like that's not very fun for young people. We're a digital community. And all the words in our program reflect that. Instead of calling them exchange groups, they're called neighborhoods. Their small group dialogues are called families. And so by the end of the program, they truly, they're not even friends within their family group. They see each other as siblings. They see those connections that's really the most important thing, is that we want not only for these young people to be empowered as leaders themselves and to go on into their communities and do great things, but we want them to stay in touch with their friends in Algeria, Iraq, and Yemen, and let them know what they're doing and what future opportunities that they are pursuing, because that gets those young people involved. And so really emphasizing that we are a community and that it goes far beyond the program, that once you are an alumni, you're a part of this community, and we want you to keep coming back and contributing, and we're just happy to see you every time you join us. So it's really fun to feel like you're friends with your participants, and that they really love and care about each other is I think what keeps them coming back.
Yeah, very cool. This next question, I'm going to have Lindsay get us started, and the question is related to fields of study and whether there are maybe particular fields of study that are more open to virtual exchange, or that you're targeting more in terms of recruiting to faculty or directly to students. or any trends you're observing there in your experience?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So we are actually with IREX and Global Solutions, we have two simultaneous programs running. One is the Challenge program, which is that business competition, the virtual business competition. And that program that runs 10 weeks and it has a provided curriculum. It's more team-based and, binational teams working together. That's primarily, we've seen a huge trend being popular among faculty teaching business, teaching entrepreneurship. But we do have faculty that teach English, teach global humanities, teach technology or history that are implementing the challenge within that. It just lends itself really well to the business department. But with our other program as well, this Conversations program, it's basically a series of 5 dialogues on design thinking and sustainability. We have faculty across the board in all departments that are implementing this and that are just looking for a piece to put into their course that brings this globalization, internationalization, and cross-cultural piece to their course. So for that, we see honestly across the gamut, all departments with that. So.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, another good question. Oh, I just lost it. Hold on, let me find it here. A question, this will be a toss-up. I'll let you decide who wants to start on this one. One of our participants today is asking if any of you have strategies to share on reaching out to communities, particularly in the United States, who are generally underrepresented and or marginalized, and how to engage those students in particular in your programming. Anyone want to get started?
I mean, that's I think a big goal of all of our programming. As part of the Stevens Initiative, the goal of our programs is to reach young people who wouldn't otherwise have this opportunity. And so those that don't traditionally access study abroad programs or even virtual exchange opportunities. So I think at the base of it, it's just being able to offer this opportunity for exchange that's kind of regardless of barriers. And so really emphasizing that these are fully funded programs, so it doesn't cost them, that they can access it anytime, anywhere, that it's mobile friendly. We are really intentional about making our programs mobile friendly because so many of these young people don't have access to like a laptop or a computer. And so making sure they can do it from a phone. And also being aware of internet access. So something that we offer is supporting data plans for those young people who would not be able to engage. So I think it's really starting with just laying out how this is accessible to them so that they're able to step in that door. Because I think so many times with these opportunities, they're presented in a way that just seems very inaccessible or something like, oh, that sounds cool, but like, I can't do that. So showing young people that this is something that was designed and created and intended for them, and that we have the support built in so that they can engage.
Yeah, I would just jump in and say that was beautifully said. Couldn't agree more. Really, that is the heart of our programs, is giving access to those who wouldn't normally have access to travel or to do other things. And so, like Kat mentioned, bringing down those barriers. All of our virtual, programs are designed to fit and be accessible to those who do have the lack of internet or, technology. And so, knowing that virtual exchange actually works well for those who might be hard to access, and that really is the heart of our programs with virtual exchange and the benefit of them. So being a voice for that and seeing how you can use that in recruiting.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to move. I feel like they responded really well. I think I definitely I absolutely agree with that. And I think in our case, this current virtual exchange program that we're running, typically students are more affluent at American University of Cairo, American University in Beirut, and somewhat at the University of Michigan, that. So, and they do have a lot of opportunities. I think that, that being said, so we work with students in Benghazi, Libya, in that area, and it's not from a specific university. It's actually open enrollment there. So, in that case, we know that there are a lot of students that have bandwidth issues, et cetera. And so we actually provide a physical space, even during COVID, safe and socially distanced. If there are some students that don't, have access to internet at home, or it's not feasible for them, that they can actually come and be in this physical space that's has good stable internet access, and we have like a local facilitator there in case they have any issues. So that's in our particular program, in this program, like how we're addressing that. But I absolutely agree that with virtual exchange, I feel like so much of it really is about accessibility and giving opportunities to people that would not have an opportunity, to study abroad, or there would be different barriers. If it's financial, or family or work, or even academic barriers in terms of their programming, and they wouldn't otherwise be able to make these types of connections, have these types of really incredible experiences. So.
Yeah, thanks. I think we have time for maybe one more quick question, changing gears a little bit, but it relates to a challenge that I think all of you mentioned in different ways throughout our conversation today, which is about whether you could speak a bit to any strategies you have to promote engagement throughout the program. So how do you keep your students engaged once you've recruited them, especially if your programs are covering longer periods of time? So anyone want to jump in and share any of those strategies?
I'm happy to jump in just real quick. It might be sort of similar for some of us. So yeah, I think that right away in the first session, we start by talking about the benefits of completing the program successfully, and we have some metrics for that. And so they have to attend 75% of the real-time, synchronous connection virtual exchange sessions. And in our case, they also have to contribute to their team's final project, to that internationalization consulting project. And that's not, that project is not submitted until the very end of the program. And so that is, I think a big part of our incentive structure. So if they kind of meet those metrics, then they become an official program participant. If they do that, then they get that certificate that they can put on their LinkedIn, that they can mention in their resume, and they also gain access in our case to the State Department International Exchange Alumni Network, and so that in and of itself has a lot of benefits that come with it. And in addition, we have some alumni opportunities that our institute kind of puts on as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have any time for any more participant questions. I know we had a lot of good ones that we don't have time for today. There were some questions that are pretty specific details about programs, so I would encourage you all, you'll get a follow-up email where you have links to the Stevens Initiative webpage, the Forum on Education Abroad webpage, as well as information about our panelists. So you might be able to find some of those answers if you visit the websites and resources that are included there. But for now, I want to ask our panelists each one rapid fire final questions, super fast. We're going to go in the following order: Lindsay, then Kat, then Megan. And the question is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to communicate with young people about the value of virtual exchange as a part of their recruitment strategy?
Oh gosh, I mean, summing up this whole discussion, right? The aspect that you have the ability to connect with people in another culture, to learn, develop empathy, learn about another culture. It's an incredible skill to develop and an incredible opportunity that you're afforded without having to travel. So think of what you could learn from that experience while also developing leadership and the ability to collaborate and in a really authentic way. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. It's fun. It's life-changing. It can be life-changing. So definitely, I think it's that's what I would say.
Go ahead, Kat. Last tip.
I would say just connect with the young people that you're trying to recruit. Think about you actually meeting that person face to face and what you would say to them. Your recruitment strategy should be no different through the screen as it would be if you were standing in front of someone. And so every time you go onto a webinar, starting it off with a lot of energy and welcoming that person just as if you were in front of a full room, you know, projecting your voice, bringing that energy and that love for virtual exchange into your conversations gets other people to buy in and gets them to see and models what virtual exchange is all about. And so if they're able to connect with you through that webinar, then they're going to be like, ooh, I want to do this again and join your program webinars. So I think really just viewing that human component of virtual exchange, seeing those young people that you're talking to, and just making that connection so that they want to be part of your program.
And for me, you know, yeah, just building off of that and similar to what Lindsay was saying, I feel like just emphasizing, you know, even during these times where you can't travel, you know, you can still make those international connections. You can still build your networks. You can still make friends, you know, across cultures. You can still practice and grow your cross-cultural skills. Virtual exchange allows you to learn new perspectives, and you can learn to work across geographic boundaries. And I think especially because our program is so business oriented and focused, you know, just that emphasizing that those are also important to the workplace of today, and just skills that you'll learn throughout your life, or use and learn and continue to learn throughout your life. And so virtual exchange is just a really powerful, you know, way to be able to do that. And it's an incredible experience.
Thank you to all of you. Thanks to our attendees for joining us today. I'm taking away a couple big themes: find your champions and share their stories, focus on skills and the skills that you can develop through virtual exchange. And just because we're on computers doesn't mean we're not connecting and that it can't be rich and deep and meaningful. So thanks to you all for enlightening me and everyone else who's joined us today. On behalf of my organization, the Forum on Education Abroad, and our partners at the Stevens Initiative, thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.